Hello, and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Shane Bigham. Coming up in this edition, Israel's expanded its offensive against Hezbollah, ordering more residents in southern Lebanon to evacuate. A new filing by federal prosecutors in the 2020 election interference case alleges Donald Trump broke the law in an effort to remain in office. Trump's denied wrongdoing. Stimulus real estate policies have attracted more potential home buyers in China's first-tier cities. We begin in the Middle East. Lebanon says an Israeli airstrike on the Syrian border has cut off the main international road linking the two countries. Israel says Hezbollah uses the road to bring weapons across the border from Syria. Israel's expanded its offensive against Hezbollah, ordering more residents in southern Lebanon to evacuate. Evangelos Sipsis reports from Beirut.
The Israeli Defense Forces have called for 25 more villages to evacuate in southern Lebanon as they push ahead with their ground operation. The localized and limited ground operation, as they call it, has been continuing to take place and has further escalated throughout the day. So far, what we do know is that there has been a lot of pushback by Hezbollah that has caused the life of more than 8 IDF soldiers, according to the Israeli side, while Hezbollah claims that more than 17 have been killed in clashes between the two groups. Bombardment by the Israeli tanks and the shelling from the Israeli side continues. While this ground operation is taking place, though, a number of airstrikes continue to be targeting parts of the country, but also the capital of Lebanon in Beirut. On Thursday, the early mornings of Thursday, there has been an airstrike at a medical center causing the life of 8 people and injuring 45 more. The interesting part of this airstrike, though, it is not in the Dahia district, the stronghold of Hezbollah, but rather in the limits of the city center. It is one of the first times that the Israeli Defense Forces have been targeting places outside of the Dahia district. But a number of other places as well have been targeted in the northern part, close to Byblos, but also in the West Bekaa Valley. Now, all these bombardments and the escalation of the conflict between the two sides have caused 1.2 million people to be displaced and to find refuge somewhere else. Thousands, hundreds of thousands had to flee southern Lebanon, while thousands also had to flee the area of Dahia, parks, the waterfront, and a number of areas. People sleeping there, and that has also have put a lot of strain to the health system of the country, as the health minister is saying that it is currently at the peak. It's saying that if this conflict does not end and there's not a ceasefire, then the government will not be able to provide the necessities to those who are actually been displaced, but also those who have been injured during this conflict. The ceasefire needs to happen, as he said. Otherwise, the government will not be able to provide the absolute necessities to those who are displaced. Now, the World Health Organization also mentioned that they're trying to bring into the country a plane with humanitarian aid, but it has been postponed a number of times because of concerns that they could be a target, simply because the airspace here in Lebanon has been closed and is only monitored by the Israeli Defense Forces.
That was Evangelos Sipsis reporting from Beirut. Meanwhile, Washington and Tel Aviv are discussing retaliation options following Tehran's missile attack on Israel on Tuesday. Iran's strikes come after Israel's killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon. Jonathan Regev has more in Tel Aviv.
It is very clear that Israel has to respond to that attack. It's an unprecedented attack, 180 ballistic missiles fired from Iran and covering practically the entire Israeli territory. Israel has to respond. What kind of a response will it be? When will Israel strike? How will it take place? That is the very big question. And of course, Israel has to be coordinated with the United States. Israel wants a very tough retaliation. The U.S. has a different view. Let's remember, the Americans are now just a month away from the elections, and the Biden administration is surely concerned that a very big, a massive Israeli retaliation could trigger a retaliation to the retaliation from Iran, eventually also drawing the United States into the conflict. The last thing the Biden administration wants just a month ahead of the elections is a major military campaign involving the United States. Therefore, Israel is pushing for a tough response. The United States is trying to persuade Israel to respond, yes, but in a perhaps a slower way, weaker way. And this is where things stand. But it is clear that some kind of a response will come. How will it look? We'll have to wait and see.
That was Jonathan Regev reporting from Tel Aviv. In North America, a new filing by federal prosecutors in the 2020 election interference case alleges Donald Trump broke the law in an effort to remain in office. The filing comes months after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled presidents have broad immunity from prosecution for official acts. But prosecutors now argue Trump acted as a private citizen. Trump's denied wrongdoing. Jim Spellman has more in Washington.
The new filing by special counsel Jack Smith paints a picture of then-President Donald Trump desperate to cling to power while knowing he lost the election. A Supreme Court ruling from July found that presidents have broad immunity from prosecution for official acts. That ruling put the federal case against Trump in doubt. This new filing argues Trump was not acting in his official role as president in the days between the 2020 election and the violence at the Capitol on January 6, 2021.
And what this document does is to go through step by step by step through every chapter of this assault on American democracy to show how Donald Trump was not acting in an official capacity to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, but rather acting like, at very best, a private candidate and really like an outlaw.
In the filing, prosecutors allege Trump was told repeatedly by his own staff and administration officials that he had lost the election, and at one point is quoted as saying, "It doesn't matter if you won or lost the election, you still have to fight like hell." Despite knowing the election was not stolen, the filing alleges Trump still encouraged his supporters to go to the Capitol on January 6, 2021. As rioters assaulted the Capitol, Trump's Vice President Mike Pence was inside preparing to formally certify the election. Despite being told, quote, "there's a riot and there are people inside the Capitol building," and even as some protesters were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," Trump was attacking his vice president on Twitter. When notified steps were being taken to protect Pence, Trump allegedly said, "So what?" Part of prosecutors' arguments that Trump knew violence was taking place and didn't act strongly enough to stop it. Trump denies wrongdoing, claiming on social media that the prosecution is politically motivated, designed to hurt his chances in the current election. Trump's defense team still have a chance to respond to the filing, but it could take weeks.
If a trial does take place, it wouldn't happen until next year, and only if Trump loses the election. If he wins, he's likely to instruct his Justice Department to quash the case.
That was Jim Spellman reporting. Still in the United States, U.S. authorities say the number of people killed due to Hurricane Helene, which struck over a week ago, has risen to at least 210. Helene's considered the second deadliest storm to hit the U.S. mainland in over 50 years. U.S. President Joe Biden's been touring hard-hit states and has promised more federal aid. Nathan King reports.
From Florida to North Carolina and all states in between, the cleanup continues after Hurricane Helene cut a path of death and destruction across the southeast of the United States. And a day after visiting the devastation in North Carolina, US President Joe Biden touched down in Florida to survey the damage. From there, he continued on to Georgia, where he pledged that the US government would continue to help clean up and rebuild.
Our job is to help as many people as we can. And that's why days before the storm hit, I pre-positioned extensive resources on the ground throughout the southeast, extensively.
In North Carolina, hundreds of people are still missing. 1,000 members of the military have been called up to help with the distribution of aid to the most isolated of communities. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris visited Georgia Wednesday, where the governor says the state's cotton and pecan crops are headed for a near complete loss. Power is slowly being restored, but on Thursday, more than 500,000 homes in Georgia and South Carolina remain dark. Thousands are without fresh water. Many have lost everything. And while the impact of a natural disaster like this is usually above politics, just a month out from the US presidential election, the reaction of the outgoing president and his would-be successor, Kamala Harris, will be closely watched by residents who were in Helene's path, many of whom happen to live in key swing states, critical to electoral success.
That was Nathan King reporting. Finally, in China, first-tier cities Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Beijing have introduced real estate policies to stabilize and boost the country's real estate market. Shuhua in Guangzhou finds out how these policies have impacted the cities so far.
No more restrictions on buying a home in the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou. Both local and non-local residents, families and single individuals can now buy as many property as they can afford in the city after a new policy took effect on the 30th September.
Guangzhou's full cancellation of the purchase restriction policy marks a major breakthrough in the regulation and control of the local real estate market.
During our 2-hour visit to one of the sales departments in Guangzhou's newly developed buildings, we found the consultation hall crowded with customers, even at lunchtime on the National Day holiday.
Somewhat influenced by the new policy, we came here to consider buying a new house. Currently, the house prices in Guangzhou are relatively low, so we want to seize this opportunity. If we find a suitable one, we will definitely buy it.
September and October have traditionally been the peak seasons for the property market. With the easing of regulations in Guangzhou and other Tier 1 cities, market confidence has been significantly boosted, bringing the long-awaited surge in home purchases during the National Day Golden Week period.
In the first week of the National Day holiday, there is generally a high transaction volume of new houses. By the evening of October 3rd, our company has closed 1,600 sets of transactions.
To explore the second-hand home market, we visited another real estate agency for 3 hours, observing a notable increase in both sellers listing their properties and potential buyers exploring their options.
Yesterday, our team's total sales jumped by roughly 20% compared to previous days, and we've seen a substantial increase in the number of customers coming to view properties. Over the past 2 days, we've closed about 6 deals. Our customers' market expectations are also evolving rapidly.
Our field tour might not be sufficient to draw a clear outlook or any conclusions, so we invited economic experts to analyze the impacts of the latest policy change.
First, following the regulation of the real estate market in recent years, housing prices in major cities have stabilized within a reasonable range, and both housing prices and urban development have embarked on a sustainable path. Second, our government has implemented stimulus policies for both the stock market and the real estate market, signaling its hope that, amidst the ongoing round of U.S. dollar interest rate cuts, the value of our core assets in China will revert to a fair valuation, thereby safeguarding the wealth of both our nation and its residents.
Wu believes that after the latest round of adjustment, property prices will shift to a normal level based on buyers' reasonable housing needs. This trend is seen as beneficial for sustainable development of China's economy in the future.
That was Shuhua reporting. Recapping today's headlines, Israel's expanded its offensive against Hezbollah, ordering more residents in southern Lebanon to evacuate. A new filing by federal prosecutors in the 2020 election interference case alleges Donald Trump broke the law in an effort to remain in office. Trump's denied wrongdoing. China's first-tier cities have introduced real estate policies to stabilize and boost the country's real estate market. That's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports, and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Shane Bigham. Thanks for listening.